how important is this coming January transfer window to the end of the season for Arsenal? How do you think it will be?
Very important. Now, January transfer windows have never been that big for us.
Yeah.
I remember 2018, maybe we bought Aubameyang and Mkhitaryan. Aubameyang was a big buy. Last time we bought Trossard, and that was like a backup, second option, plan B kind of signing. But if you take a look at the other Januaries, you find us January where we signed Cedric and Pablo Mari. You'll find us as January where we signed Karlstrom. You'll find a
Yeah.
January where we didn't do anything. So usually
Yeah.
sign like
There's a
even
January where we brought in, was it Dennis Suarez?
Dennis Suarez. He never
Yeah.
played any game. So you've
Is
had
he one
some
of the worst
terrible January
signings we
transfer.
have ever had in this club?
You're not even one of the worst. Yeah, worst. He only played like
Yeah.
one game, so definitely worst signing. So there's a lot of January windows we've not done anything. But this time I feel like it's definitely going to be important, because if it gets to that January and you buy a player like a lot of teams have been looking for, and you make a statement signing, that will be big. Anyone, Osimhen, Toney. Now Neto is good, but Neto gets a lot of injuries. That is my worry.
Yeah.
Neto's been injured for the last like 3 years, so unless he's 100% fit as a backup, that would be great. But if he gets a statement signing, I want a midfield. If he can get a midfield and a striker, that would be good. Like two signings, at least that would be big for us. So again, it depends. Cause another thing, I think AFCON is in January. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
in January or the.
AFCON is in January.
Wow. So Party is going to go.
Mm.
El Neni is going to go. Tomias is going to go for the Asian Cup. So right away, you're going to lose 3 players. So right away, we are going to need a midfielder there. So in either way, even if Partey was there, I still needed a midfielder. So you're going to need a midfielder there, and hopefully you can get a forward player. For me personally, I still feel like the kind of striker I'm looking for maybe 2 different kind of strikers. Sign one, but 2 kind of there's a word I'm looking for, it has disappeared. But either striker, like as I've always said, a striker like a Giroud, a tall striker where if it's in the last minute, we can put in those crosses. Sometimes we put in so many crosses, and Jesus and Saka are not really those players who can jump for headers. If you can get a striker like that, you can bring off the bench, that would be good. Or a striker who can also play like on the wings, like players like and Kolo Muani, I think, is played forward and plays on the wing. Even Thuram at Inter Milan, he can play forward. He can
Yeah.
play as a 10.
Yeah.
He can play on the left side. Players like that. If you get like an Osimhen, that is fine. I want 2 players in January. I think it's very, very key, because I think Man City will buy a player or 2 in January, and maybe Tottenham will strengthen as well. Maybe Liverpool strengthen as well. Now, where I don't agree is you can say that without saying I don't think Jesus can score you 10 goals in a season. No, he can't. He was injured for 4 months last season and he still scored 11 goals. I'm
Yeah.
sure he'd have gotten 16 or 17. And the kind of striker that we have in Jesus, he does so much for our team.
Yeah. So much for
And
the
we don't always play him as a center forward anyway. Sometimes he comes to the number 10 position. Sometimes he plays on the right side. So he's not going to score that many goals. But it will be good to add to Jesus and Ketty just to have a different option for sure. But I need a midfield as well, because Party is going in January for the African Cup.
Okay, so with the options, I think we have a couple of positions and we have a couple of options. We are not short of options. Let's start off with that midfield position, like you've said. We've looked at Quintem Timber in midfield, and Quintem Timber is not a player that most of us have actually heard about or researched about. But what I would say is he plays more as a DM CM, not attacking midfielder, DM CM. So Rice, Lokonga, Partey. That is Quintem Timber. Would you prefer a player like Quintem? He's 22 at the moment, so younger than Declan Rice, doesn't bring in that kind of experience, comes in just to fight for his position, raw, has the legs, and very, very fresh. Or would you prefer, like what we did last January, a player like Jorginho, a player with that experience, a bit of pedigree, someone who can actually mix it up. Like if we went and brought in a player um like like Douglas Lewis. Now Douglas Lewis, not that old guy, but he's so experienced. Like you would have signed experience at a very young age, just like we did with Declan Rice. What do you prefer? Experience, pedigree to see us through the season, or young one for the future, young one for the project.
For that January one, I think for the future one, I usually prefer it in the summer.
Mm.
But for January, when it's crucial time, I prefer having like experience someone like a Douglas Luiz, as you mentioned. Now, I do follow Quinton Timber because I play Champions League fantasy, and
Oh,
he is in my team. He is in
okay.
my team, and I watched the final game, like looking at how he played, not because he was going to join us, but because I had him in my team. So I was watching and I was like, yeah, this guy gets a lot of interceptions as well, just like Declan Rice in midfield. I think he scored maybe a goal and an assist this season, so he is good. It would be good. Like imagine having two twins in the team, like a Rafael and Fabio at Man United. Like maybe sub one off and bring on the other without the
Yeah, you
referee
bring on the
noticing.
other.
You know,
Yeah,
you can do it without the referee noticing. So it should be good. But I would prefer for January transfer window when it's business time. That time you could be in the semi-final of the Carabao Cup. The
yeah.
FA Cup is just getting started. You could be awaiting, or you would know which team you're going to play in the last 16 of the Champions League. So Premier League, you could be first, you could be second, you could be battling it out. So you need veterans, as Moji says. You need veterans for that January transfer window. Players like
Mm.
Quentin Timber and players for the future, players who get linked from Brazil and all that. Summer transfer window where you like test them for 2 months during the preseason. But January, it's not time for testing. January, you're coming to play. Party is not there. Tomias is not there. You're coming to play, and maybe you have a couple of injuries. You need to play. So I think more experience. Someone like Douglas Luiz, as you say. If there's one player that I really like in terms of
Well, Glenn has, signed off for a little bit. I think his internet is lacking a little bit, but of course, we'll get to him when he comes back. We're still discussing what do we need in January as a club. What do Arsenal need in January? We've talked about Quinton Timber, the midfield. I mean, Glenn raises a big point in the midfield because again, you don't have Partey, you don't have Mohamed El Neni, and we might not have Takara Tomias as well. He might be leaving for the Asian Games, and that means that in the end Arsenal will be left with a whole gap, like a big gap. So Quinton Timber, which players do you think Arsenal should be looking at in January? But personally, I wanted to talk about the two players, Pedro Neto and Ivan Toney. We've talked about Ivan Toney before, and I think it's one of the players that we will see on the market in January. He's one of the players that we will definitely see on the market in January. He is good. He's going to be available. He's going to be back. Should we spend 80 million on Ivan Toney, right? So Glenn is back. Let's get into the Ivan Toney debate straight away. Glenn, welcome back. I was talking about Toney and the demands. 80 million is what Brentford are asking for. If we cannot get a midfielder, of course, again, our transfer strategy is very, very strong. We prefer to sign players for the longer term rather than the shorter term, and we prefer to sign players that we have looked at for a longer period of time. Ivan Toney, I would say, is in that bracket of players that we have looked at for a longer period of time. 80 million, January. What do you think?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well.
Awesome. So I really like Ivan Toney mainly because of how like Raya usually hits the ball to him at Brentford and usually wins every like second ball
Yeah.
and every long ball in the air. So that is one reason that I really love um Ivan Toney. I feel like it gives us something different, like what I've been saying. Like if you put in across Ivan Toney is there, like a poacher. I know Nkete can do the poaching stuff. I think Tony would be better in terms of that. The rebounds, just wait. Like the goal he scored against us, the offside goal he scored against us last season,
Yeah.
he's very good, like being in those sort of positions. Um, like if I have Ivan Toney and Jesus in the team, who would I start? I'd still start Jesus. You know why? Jesus gives us a lot in terms of coming back to midfield combination play. Tony could be that. He could help. He could learn that in terms of combining Martinelli and Saka and all that. That would be good. If there's a way to fit both of them in the team, that is absolutely fine. But where I don't agree is people usually say like Ivan Toney is like 10 times better than Jesus. That's not true. Like people say Ivan Toney can score 20 goals in the Premier League. That is true, but if we compare, you know how many penalties Ivan Toney scores in a season? He scores like 8, 9 penalties in a
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
So
I
if
mean, last season he converted many penalties.
many,
Of the 20 goals he scored, I think a minimum of six penalties.
so if Jesus was taking Arsenal penalties as well, we'd have been talking 17, 18 goals as
Yeah.
well. So there's that. So if you compare in terms of number of goals, remember that Tony scores a couple of free kicks. I think he scored like 2 free kicks last season and like 6, 7 penalties, and he always takes them. Even if he misses, he takes the next one. So
Yeah,
there's that. So in terms of goals, I don't think it's fair comparing like Jesus scores this and Tony scores this. Tony takes a lot of penalties for Brentford, and Jesus doesn't take penalties for Arsenal. So
mm,
there's that. But in terms of overall play, I think Tony will bring something different that we don't have. We have that
yeah,
combination play, and a player who gets into a lot of ground duels like Jesus. He can play on the right side, can play on the left side, can play as a striker. That is good. And Nketiah, as we say, is not the best finisher, but he will work for you. Like I watched Nketiah against Brentford in the Carabao Cup, and this last game against Man City, he runs a lot. Like you never see him. I don't think you can ever say Nketiah is lazy. I saw someone the other day in a comment section saying Nketiah is lazy. And I was like, nah, there's
yeah.
no
Uh,
chance.
uh,
Like he
yeah,
runs a
that is
lot.
slander. That is
He
slander.
ran, yeah, he runs a lot. So that is one thing that Nketiah is 100% good at. But Tony would bring something that we don't have. He'd add the Premier League experience. He's now played there for 3 years. Number two, the aerial duels. So you will win a lot of them. So if you have like Evan Tony and Havas on the pitch at the same time, you can win a lot of headers in the
Yeah,
final
George,
third,
yeah.
crosses. Maybe with Evan Tony, we might win a lot of trophies because we'll never miss penalties. Having Evan Tony and Jorginho in the
So
team,
you just
we'll never
you
miss.
give him either the first penalty or the last one.
Yeah, and the last one. And then you have Jorginho and Odegaard there. You're never going to miss any penalties. So
Yeah.
there's that as well. But I think it brings something different, like the physicality in the box, the poacher, the aerial duel. So I definitely take him. And it looks like he wants to play for Arsenal. I like players who want to play for Arsenal. So I would definitely take him.
Yeah, I mean, there's a conversation to be had with Ivan Toney whether he's a risk. You know, if you signed Andy Carroll, if you looked at the signing of Andy Carroll by Liverpool, I would say signing a player like Ole Watkins, signing a player like Ivan Toney could be in that basket, right?
Hmm.
uh, they've done well in the championship. They've done well at Brentford and all these small sides, but the level of competitiveness and the demands and the pressure is very very different. And for you to perform at a club like Arsenal, it takes it takes a special character. It takes a very very special personality. So do you think it's kind of very very risky, especially the 80 million they're asking for? Do you think it could come at Arsenal and genuinely become a flop? Again, our system could actually not not be better for him. We'll have to change our system to suit his demands. So do you think it's more like a risk as compared to if you went and signed probably if you signed him for around 50, 60?
I think you would hit the ground running because of that experience. The worry is, as you said, the way we play.
Yeah,
The way Arsenal play, that's the problem with bringing players like Osimhen. Yes, it would be good having a player like Osimhen scoring 100 goals in a season, but the way we play, especially rotation, Odegaard is on the right side. Sometimes he's the number 8. Sometimes he's the
yeah,
10.
yeah, yeah,
Jesus
yeah.
is on the right. Sometimes it's Nketiah on the left. Sometimes Martinelli is on the left. Sometimes the center forward. Will Osman do that for you? Can we ask him, okay, go on the left for 5 minutes and then go on the right for 10 minutes? I'm not sure about that. So, in terms of changing the system, that would be a problem. But I think coming to Arsenal, you have to. I don't think it'd be. I don't know if it'd be a starter right away because that means dropping Jesus. As I said, Jesus is a
Yeah.
starter for me. I've never dropped him to the bench. It depends. For 80 million, I think is worth that price. If you're talking 110, 120, that is too
Yeah, that yeah, yeah,
much.
that's
But
yeah,
80,
that's totally more.
70, I
Yeah.
think that would be good. The only worry for now is fitness. Yes, I think it's training. I think it's training right now, but in terms of match fitness, that is my only worry because he'll have gone like 6 months, 7 months, 8 months without playing. So I don't know if he's going to hit the ground running right away. You compared players like Watkins, I would very quickly take. If he gave me the chance to take Watkins, I'd take him so quickly. Like
Mm,
the
mm.
pacing behind and all that and the finishing, very good. And before I went off, I was just talking about McGinn. I'd mentioned McGinn. If you give me a midfielder like McGinn, I'd take him. So the only worry about Tony is the fitness because he's not played for like 8 months and we'll need him right away. That
Yeah,
would
true.
be my only worry.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it could come in as a risk. Look, just slightly to answer Ronnie's comment. Can you compare for me Tony and Balogun? Well, I think. Look, listen. It's a comparison that we shouldn't have at the moment, but just for you, I think Florian Balogun is Victor Osimhen type, And I think Ivan Toney is more like, I would even say he's in the Erling Haaland type. Because with Balogun, you have players, you have him as a player that doesn't want to hold the ball. I mean, his hold up play is not something you can rely on, but he's going to make those runs for you, and you have to find him. You absolutely have to find him, because he's a penalty runner. He's a entry runner. And I think he's the opposite of Edin Ketia. He's the opposite of Ivan Toney. He doesn't have that, hold up. That is not what he does. What he literally does is he will give himself space as a center forward in the penalty area always. If you've seen it with Victor Osimhen, much of the time, what he does as a striker is he gives himself space, in the penalty area. He gives himself space, as a striker against defenders, and you can easily find him in space. Who is the better striker for me in terms of type? I think Tony scores all kinds of goals. Like, to be honest, he doesn't run a lot, so probably wouldn't score for you a counter attack. Balogun would score for you a counter attack, in my opinion. But I would still take Ivan Tony. I think he scores more types of goals as compared to Florian Balogun. But also, Balogun is still a little bit younger, and his career is going to be shaped by many managers. It's going to be shaped by a couple of factors. He might run into a Diego Simeone, who will turn him into a different striker. He might, run into Zidane. He will turn him to a different striker. He might run into Xavi. He might turn him into a Robert Lewandowski, and a couple of things, right? So for me personally, I would say Balogun is kind of different in a way that you're looking at Osimhen, right? You're looking at the Osimhen type. And with Ivan Toney, his hold up play, physicality, he's more like Mitrovic. He's more, that is the type of striker. More like Mitrovic. He'll score for you a header, score for you a penalty. His right foot, left foot as well, and his hold up is very good. Mikel Antonio as well. They're in the same bracket. They're in the same bucket, right? Probably Erling Haaland is a gem kind of, but if you wanted to harmonize it down and bring it down, that's what I would say. Okay, Augustine says get Osimhen and win the league. Does he win us the league? It's a huge question. Does he win us the league? Probably. Big up to you, Glenn, for being on the show. Love you, bro. Thank you so much. Isaac says I would like Ateta to surprise you, right, with the transfer of Pedro Neto in January. Surprise you. I mean, do we need a right player, a right attacker? We absolutely do. There's no question about that. I would be surprised if Arsenal literally did not think about a right sided attacker. Even if we don't sign one, we've got to think about one. I think we will end the show at that. Glenn, Pedro Neto, loved by Arsenal fans. He's electric, has had a very good start to the campaign. Just in a minute, do you think it would be again another genius of his transfer window?
As I said, the only worry about Neto is injuries. He's picked
Yeah,
up like 2 or 3 big injuries the last 2 years. I've watched him the last few games for Wolves. I think it was Joe Gomez. Is it Joe Gomez? He ripped
yeah,
apart Gomez when they played Liverpool. That first half, he ripped him apart. Even the other day when they played Man City and they beat Man City, I think he
yeah,
ripped apart Nathan Ake.
yeah.
Like, he's very good. He's very quick. Like,
And
when he's
again,
on
I
the
think it
pitch.
was against Aston Villa as well in the last game.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Electric
And he played on the left side against Liverpool for a few minutes, and he played on the right side
on the
against
right
Man
side. Yeah,
City. So he can play in a couple of positions as well. So I do love Pedro Neto. It depends on the price, I guess. If you tell me 60 million, I'd be like, those injuries are too much. Like if it's something like a Trossard, 20 million, 25 million bargain,
yeah,
you get him right away. So I would take him, but it depends. But that for me, I still feel like if you get another kind of player like a Declan Rice, you win the league more
yeah.
than if you get another winger, if you get another striker, if you get another player like Declan Rice there, and you just don't concede goals. If you get 1 or 2 goals on the other side, which we can, we have Saka, we have Martinelli, we have Jesus, I still be confident.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for watching the show. It is Me, Cossy, and Glenn, right on the Total Access Show. We've been live for almost an hour and 7 minutes. Of course, we've discussed a couple of things. Julian Timber is set to be back as early as January, and Arsenal could have him in the later parts of the Champions League if those stories are actually to be believed. Of course, we talked about the injury crisis and the impact and how to mitigate it. We've got to rotate. There's no question about that. We've talked about whether Arsenal are really big title champions and and contenders. Are we favorites? All those topics are in the show. If you've missed the earlier part, make sure you do watch it. You've been very good watchers, very good listeners as well. We'll speak to you right in the next one. For now, we are going to say have a blessed evening. See you right in the morning.